the impacts that it has. We know that its impact on peace in the world, and especially food security in our beloved continent of Africa. And now we need to all come together, ensure our autonomy in all the sectors by strengthening our capacities, our production capacities, not only to avoid lack of stocks, but also to add value to our primary resources and create employment. But these objectives can never be reached without proper coordinations of our efforts in order to reach economic freedom and develop new strategies on this in order to protect ourselves, protect our countries today and in the future. And so I am very happy seeing the dialogue we have here with the private sector. This is a good platform to engage for the betterment of the implementation of Africa Free Area Trade. This dialogue is crucial because, as we all know, the private sector in the continent is very principal in the acceleration of Africa Free Area Trade, and I do believe that they own this dialogue and they will devote themselves in all the processes for a quick and successful implementation of a common project. Dear representatives of Africa private sector, we have always wanted and always had the desire to have a strengthening of capacities within the region and the continent through intra-trade and employment creation, through women entrepreneurship, youth and women entrepreneurship. This will help these said part of our populations to be alienated from any form of extremism. Today, with the opportunities that the Africa Free Area Trade Zone is creating, we have space for investment and business trade among countries to bring about prosperity. It is therefore time for our leaders and you, private sector, to share in all truth in order to overcome every obstacle that hinders us from moving in an inclusive manner towards a strong and durable economic front in the continent. You do incarnate the true life, social life and economical life of our continent with all the production, 2/3 of its investment, 3/4 of its credits, and you are employing about 90% of its population, of its dynamic population. With this, you are then a good platform for the development of our socio-economical and ecological position of our continent. Working in synergy together, we can become a catalyst for a durable economy. It is very important for Africa Free Area Trade in terms of opportunity of trade and investment. It is time to demonstrate the will to move, and for this potentiality to become fully implemented, it is very important that the Africa private sector, particularly small and medium enterprises, should own Africa Free Area Trade Zone and move with its processes. With this, I do congratulate the efforts that the Secretariat of Africa Free Area Trade has taken in partnership with the Center of International Commerce. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, to overcome the challenge within Africa Free Area Trade Zone and to maximize their potentialities, we have developed a favorable ecosystem for the production of of goods and services for our space as integrated market. Once more, we need to put in place tools that will accompany, necessary tools that will accompany the realization of this, and this will have a positive and durable impact on the continent. Things like new technology and also blue economy that constitutes a great opportunity in terms of investment and income. It is in this sense that Amoroni in the Comoros 14th to 12th to 14th of next month will be meeting on the blue area, blue market, and we do encourage African ministers of trade and industry to integrate the implementation of African Free Area Trade Zone in their agenda and to prepare themselves to overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities that this Free Area Trade Zone in the continent of Africa gives. It is good to integrate totally. This will offer great reward to our beloved continent. The place for the African Union, the protocol of Africa Free Area Trade, the right of intellectual property and confidentiality is part of a great move towards the realization of this dream. And in our engagement, government should work hand in hand with the private sector, with the civil society and our citizens, in order for the Africa Free Area Zone not fail by only being an illusion. The partnership, a public-private partnership, is very important for our durable growth in funding all the technical assistance. This will allow African countries and industries to develop and grow and help us reach our goal of Africa, developed Africa for Africans. And with this, I would like to say there is need to institutionalize a dialogue with Africa private sector in the implementation of Africa Free Area Trade. It will be a good model in the area. My country, Comoros, has begun the process of dialogue, public-private dialogue, putting in place a platform of regular exchanges. These exchanges today is very beneficial to my country. Ladies and gentlemen, actors of private sector, for Africa Free Area Trade to be operational, all our countries should move in the ratification of its treaty. It is the advocacy we are doing now, and we are convinced that the remaining countries will join us in this good move, that together we shall make this ambition a success and business opportunity for our beloved continent and companies and people in particular, and the youth and African women. Before finishing, I want to congratulate my dear brother Mamadi Fufu, present here. This opportunity, this great opportunity to have him as champion of this major ambition that we have. I know him very well. He has always invested himself for the interest of Africa, and I do thank him and ask you all to clap for him and encourage him so that we shall all reach this great work. Once more, my brother Ruto, thank you for this warm welcome. Thank you all. Applaudissons pour le président Ousmane. S'il vous plaît, regagnez vos places.
Let me just take a few moments to recognize all of us leaders who are present here, and to again welcome you to Nairobi and Kenya, to this historic meeting because I am a great believer that we are at a historic juncture in world development in which Africa is emerging as a focal point of important global discourse. This is therefore a crucial opportunity for us in Africa to define the terms and conditions under which we shall pursue African self-sufficiency in order to actualize the African right to self-determination. I see this as an underlying expectation as well as the fundamental philosophy of the Africa we want. The cardinal aspirations underpinning the Africa Union's Agenda 2063 are the output of sustained deliberation. They also require us to engage in deeper analysis through inclusive deliberation in order to clarify the path by which Africa will arrive at its place as the global economic powerhouse of the very near future. It often appears as though matters canvassed at the AU level are purely and exclusively intergovernmental. Yet nothing could be further from the truth. The economy, development, and self-sufficiency are multisectoral and interconnected concerns that must be pursued through collaboration and consultation by all stakeholders in the public as well as the private sectors at the domestic, regional, as well as continental levels. It is through robust dialogue, guided by this understanding, that we have made progress in developing and implementing a blueprint for the realization of Africa's aspirations. Recognizing that the contribution of the private sector is vital to Africa's socio-economic transformation and that its voice must define the dialogue about integration and economic reliance is a major component of our mission, not just in this meeting, but on a mission as a people and as a continent. This event, which is designed to underscore and promote the private sector's involvement in the achievement of Agenda 2063, is therefore of particular importance. Everyone who has participated in organizing this event and everyone who is taking part in these proceedings is making a significant contribution in moving the agenda forward by enhancing the role of an indispensable dimension of development, the private sector. This is why I'm delighted and grateful that you have all honored our invitation to the African Private Sector Dialogue. I welcome you all to Kenya's capital city of Nairobi, and on behalf of the people of Kenya, extend a very warm welcome to you all. Coming at a time when the Africa Union heads of state and governments have set pace for the effective implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, this dialogue provides a crucial forum for collective reflection on matters of vital significance. I am glad for this opportunity that we shall have at this dialogue to share experiences on past endeavors, to understand regional integration, assess the current status of ongoing processes, and use the best of our collective knowledge to forge the way into the future of African prosperity. The increasingly complicated, delicate, and uncertain geopolitical environment has exerted disruptive pressures upon global trading systems. Emanating from such diverse events as Brexit in 2016, whose effects continue to reverberate throughout world economies, the World Trade Organization's Doha negotiations that remain unconcluded, escalating protectionism, and more recently, the COVID pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and of course, the climate crisis that we all face. The shocks and stresses arising from these events have exacerbated the vulnerability of African economies and intensified poverty and suffering. The Russia-Ukraine conflict alone has disorganized food and energy supply chains which serve our continent, causing acute shortage and driving commodity prices to unprecedented levels that are unaffordable to the majority of our people. This complicated crisis must alert us to the unacceptable reality that as matters presently stand, our economies and societies are prone to the negative impacts of events taking place in lands very far away from us. This reality arises due to two primary facts that go into the heart of the Agenda 2063 aspirations generally and the ACFTA in particular. First, Africa urgently needs to work its way steadily and rapidly up from the bottom of the global value chains by unlocking the full potential of our abundant endowments of minerals, energy, natural resources, and human capital through industrialization, mining processes, and manufacturing. 60% of global arable land reserves are in Africa, and we have not begun to fully utilize. African exports are among the world's least diversified, with commodities accounting for over 60% of the total merchandise export in 45 of the 55 countries. This situation exposes us quite badly to global commodity price shocks, effectively undermining the continent's prospects for inclusive growth and development. Secondly, intra-Africa trade is remarkably low, at 17% compared to 40% in Asia, 60% in the Americas, and 70% in Europe. The bulk of Africa's imports and exports relate to markets outside the continent. Although Africa has been a net importer of agricultural commodities since the year 2000, 81% of these imports come from outside Africa, while 78% of its exports are destined for the rest of the world, not Africa. We must be intentional and deliberate about rehabilitating our economy as a continent from these grave deficiencies in order to correct the obvious vulnerability that they cause. A little disruption in the supply chain causes major shocks of imports of commodities and export of the same. We have a highly promising opportunity to sustain a robust conversation about resilience, generate strong consensus regarding self-sufficiency, and design policies and strategies that will direct public and private investments towards competitive efficiencies, increasing employment, creating wealth, and making sure that we are less vulnerable as a continent. A major enabler of continental economic takeoff, requiring considerable investment, is infrastructure. Low infrastructure connectivity is a serious impediment of our ambition to realize Africa's full trade and economic growth potential. Consequently, this dialogue provides the perfect occasion to align government and private sector complementarity with the colossal demand for port, rail, road, and air transport, power and energy, as well as information, communication, and technology infrastructure. Here is the opportunity in more detail. With appropriate levels of connectivity, Africa's digital economy is projected at US $180 billion by 2025, or 5.2% of the continent's GDP. That's just technology. and US dollars 720 billion by 2050, or 8.5% of African GDP. And here is the infrastructure demand in context. Lack of efficient transport networks increases the price of goods traded among African countries by between 30 and 40%, rendering Africa effectively uncompetitive and eliminating the opportunity for us to trade merely because of logistics. You've heard from my Minister for Trade that tea, which was supposed to take 3 weeks or less to get to Ghana, took 3 months. Because it didn't go to Ghana. It went the opposite direction first because of transport logistics. Bearing in mind that 16 African countries are landlocked, underdeveloped transport connectivity hampers intra-Africa trade and drives up the cost of imports and exports with regard to other parts of the world. To further illustrate this point, I remind you of the confinement, which I just said, of value-added Kenyan tea destined for Ghana, which left, and I was there with Wamkele, which left Nairobi on the 5th of October, but it got to the port of Tema in February the next year. The current level of lack of connectivity is a great impediment to our progress as a continent. And therefore, the Agenda 2063, which speaks with clarity on what type of infrastructure that we need to be able to connect our countries, eliminate the barriers that are erected by our boundaries, and human capital and human beings who hamper trade. These are unnecessary impediments to trade and investment in our region. The current level of technology in the fields of infrastructure development across sectors is fairly high. This dialogue is a golden opportunity for African private sector and African governments to deploy the concept of technology leapfrogging, thereby ensuring that advanced technologies are incorporated into priority infrastructure investments. Similarly, the implementation of the single African air transport market must be attended to in this dialogue with particular urgency. Already there is a conversation between Kenya, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Uganda, on how we can consolidate our air transport and have a regional airline that can move people, that can move goods, that can move services across our region without the current unnecessary impediments caused by air transport fragmentation. Similarly, the implementation of this will define the opportunities for private sector to invest in a liberalized air transport sector and enhance our air traffic penetration from the current 14.5%. African integration will also benefit significantly from this endeavor. The overarching methodology of the Africa we want is to transcend all the shortcomings, gaps, and vulnerabilities currently impeding Africa's progress and potential by redefining them as transformational opportunities for private-public collaboration. Public-private partnerships have the potential to augment the Program for Infrastructure Development, as well as the African Development Bank's initiative to facilitate projects aimed at bridging the continent's infrastructure gap to sustainably support connectivity. I will give you an example. We're now diversifying on how to transport energy. We do not have to invest as government on transmission lines. We believe the private sector can invest in transmission lines so that we can pay a willing charge as government, leverage on the expertise of the private sector, on the resources of the private sector, enhance private sector capacity to be able to work with us as governments on the delivery of public programs, whether it is supply of energy, whether it is transmission of energy, or in the case of Kenya, we are now having a whole program on how to deliver water on a water purchase agreement instrument that allows the private sector to work with us in ensuring that we can deliver water drinking, for irrigation, for use by livestock to our people. And therefore, there is opportunity for the private sector to work with the public in areas that were considered strictly public goods space. I trust that I have adequately made out the case for the high level of expectations I have in connection with this dialogue. I anticipate your recommendations and policy proposals on the best methods of developing Africa's transcontinental and interregional infrastructure. I also expect that this dialogue will propose optimal private-public partnership frameworks to accelerate our infrastructure development agenda. This moment requires us to be bold and ambitious in fashioning our way up from the bottom of the global trade, productivity, and industrialization. I encourage you to extend your deliberations into such possibilities as African shipping lines, dedicated cargo airlines, and a network of trans-Africa railway lines laid down by each country across its territory that connect seamlessly across our borders. We are currently having a conversation between Kenya, Uganda, DRC, including Congo Brazzaville, to see how we can connect the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic. I think there is only a section of 1,000 kilometers of rail, and that should be connected. And as countries, we are prepared to work on it together, that we can do our section in Kenya. Uganda are already working on their section. We are discussing with the government of DRC to see how together we can get the resources to get the 1,000 kilometers in DRC connected into the Congo River and transport our goods and products across the heartland of Africa. A vital area that I will expect this dialogue to effectively address is the matter of sustainable financing. The opportunity is ripe for governments to collaborate with the private sector and establish a strong institution capable of de-risking African infrastructure development financing. The partnership between Afrexim Bank and ACFTA Secretariat for purposes of establishing an adjustment fund is timely, highly appropriate, and commendable. Such a fund would cushion countries against short-term revenue losses and support eligible private sector firms to upscale operational capacity in order to undertake projects and other opportunities on a continental scale. It is also imperative that we proactively seek a resolution to the disparities in currencies and the consequential impediments it poses to intra-African trade. Trade, ladies and gentlemen, cannot take place without efficient and a unified payment system. although there has been introduction of several regional payment infrastructure in the continent, we lack a single system that seamlessly facilitates trade among all our nations, eliminating the obstacles posed by varying currencies. I am, however, delighted to note that Afreximbank, in its mandate to facilitate intra-Africa and extra-Africa trade, embarked on building a centralized payment and settlement system to support trade under the ACFTA. It is called the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System. Banks and payment providers can plug directly to it to enable secure and instant payment in local currency. The system is designed to reduce or eliminate the challenges of cross-border payments and by so doing, accelerate intra-Africa trade. Let me say this. I think it is important for the trade ministers who are here. We are all struggling, and all our businessmen are struggling, and our traders are struggling to make payments for goods and services from one country to another because of differences in currencies. And in the middle of all this, we are all subjected to a dollar environment. Kenyans want to pay for Tanzanian goods in dollars. Tanzania wants to pay for DRC goods in dollars. Egypt wants to pay. Why are we bringing dollars in the middle of our trade? This is the question we should be asking ourselves. And in the process, all our business people are stranded. Egypt cannot pay for our tea because they are looking for dollars. We cannot pay for their sugar because we are also looking for dollars. You know? And this is I had a conversation with President Orama of the Afreximbank, and they have built a mechanism where all our traders can trade in the local currency, and we leave it to the Afreximbank to settle all the payments in local currency. We do not have to look for dollars. Our businessmen, our business people, our traders will concentrate on moving goods and services and leave the arduous task of currencies to Afreximbank. I know we are all trying to see because of what the dollar has done to all our economies. The dollar has moved from less than 1% in the US to about 5.2%. With that movement, and I am told it is the steepest rise in interest rates ever since the US established their mechanism. That steep rise has caused us unnecessary trouble. I think it is important for us to figure out. Many of us are saying, oh, maybe we should move away from the dollar to the yuan. Maybe we should move away from the dollar to another currency. I suggest that we have a mechanism where we can settle all our payments, whether between our countries or externally, using our local currencies, and we have a mechanism like the one that has been put up by the Afrexim to settle all that so that we don't have to be hostage to any one currency or the other. Without a single payment platform, payment instructions from one African country to another typically passes through several intermediary financial institutions, leading to increased costs, complications, problems, and unnecessary currency fluctuations, and ends up being a whole ecosystem of confusion. Additionally, the time has come to introduce Pan-African insurance agencies and other African institutions to opportunities in the FCFTA market. My brother Mekele, you have a job to do. But first of all, we must take decisive steps to strengthen our financial institutions to effectively support